Everyone always talks about the original Halloween as being the masterpiece, but honestly, I think that Halloween 2 from 1981 might be the most important Halloween film of them all. Because without this movie, Halloween probably never becomes the giant horror franchise that we know it as today. You know, when you think about it, Halloween 2 didn't just continue the story, it basically created the formula for the entire franchise moving forward. This movie gave Halloween its very first sequel. It introduced Laurie Strode as being Michael Myers' sister, which obviously sets up the next however many films. It was the film that made Michael feel supernatural, and in my opinion, this was definitely the movie that cemented Dr. Loomis as one of horror's greatest recurring characters. And without Halloween 2, there's a very real chance that we just stayed with that original movie. It completely defined what the franchise would become for the next 40 years. And I think that that's something that some people forget. I was watching number 2 recently and it made me think about the original. You know, it is the perfect standalone story in my opinion. Michael disappears, the evil survives, the end. You know, almost the cycle continues, who knows what happens. I absolutely think that you don't need a sequel, but Halloween 2 proved that Michael Myers could absolutely return, and even though it's a bit of a meme now of how many times he comes back, it showed how much audiences wanted more. You know, that one decision, while Halloween absolutely is a classic horror movie, it changed it from being just that to being a complete horror franchise. And yeah, like I said, with that opened the door for every sequel, reboot, timeline change, you name it, continuation that came after that. The biggest twist of the film and the franchise as a whole really is always for me going to be when Laurie is outed as Michael's sister. You know, you could say that this is divisive now. Some people like the idea of it, some people hate the idea of it. I think the general gist of fans see it as it kind of made Michael a little bit less scary because it brought emotion into it. And as well as that, it gave him a personal motive. However, having said that, films like Halloween 4 and H2O are some of my favourite additions to the franchise, and, you know, without that twist of her being Michael's sister, we wouldn't have got those films in the same way they would have been if there were multiple films made. You know, it absolutely defined Halloween lore completely, and almost every sequel after that was built around family, bloodlines, fate, and Michael hunting down Laurie. What Halloween 2 also did though was make Michael Myers an unstoppable, almost immortal force, it felt like. In that original movie, he's still absolutely terrifying, but there's still something very human to him, even with Nick Castle's movement at times. But then Halloween 2 with Dick Warlock, the movement was so kind of unnatural and, you know, stiff. I didn't actually like it for a while, especially when I was younger. I thought it was too slow. I didn't find it, like, very creepy. However, as years went on and I consistently revisited that film, I realised that there is something so inhuman, and that is what makes it scary to me about the way Michael moves and acts in that film. You know, Michael has been stabbed, he's been shot, he's been blinded, he's been caught in an explosion, and he still keeps moving forward. And that to me is where that saying of pure evil comes into it, and it's where that I feel like really took off at that point. And yeah, escaping that explosion isn't the only time that Michael ends up escaping death in, you know, the future films to come. Dr. Loomis as well, you know, I could say so much about Donald Pleasance and his performances over the Halloween films. He's at times the core of that franchise, and I absolutely love what he created with Dr. Loomis. You know, that obsession, the paranoia, the desperation at times. I think it was all amazing, and he elevates so much from just Michael's psychiatrist to, you know, where in Halloween 5 and 6, you know, he gets kind of creepy. And, you know, when you watch the more recent films, I think you really feel that energy that's kind of missing from some of the films because he's unfortunately obviously not here anymore. So yeah, Halloween may have been the masterpiece, but Halloween 2 in my opinion is absolutely the movie that solidified this as a full-blown franchise that can go on, as we've seen, for decades. Let me know down in the comments below if you agree with this, that Halloween 2 is pretty much the most important film in the franchise. But if you don't agree, let me know which one you think is, and let me know why in the comments as well. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next one.